Hey, my name is Steve and I'm not a luthier, but I built this guitar with a pretty modest set of tools. If I can do this, anyone can. Today I'm going to show you how to put a nice lacquer finish on using rattle cans in your own garage. Okay, so what I have here is just a little method of heating up the lacquer in hot water. It just causes the compressing the gas creates a finer spray, so that's why I've done that. Alright, we are getting ready to spray lacquer on. I've already got a couple of coats. I didn't show you the first couple of coats. I was able to stain the places that sanded through the stain. It's not perfect, but it's, you have to look really close to see the discolorations. So I'm happy with that. I've got a couple of coats of lacquer on the body. I'm going to do one more coat, let it set for a couple of days, and then do some wet sanding. These are very light coats. I don't know how well you can see that, but it's just a very light spray that I'm putting on. I'll do the same on the neck. And I'm going to let that sit for 48 hours, and then I will do some wet sanding, and then we'll add more coats. Okay, I've done kind of a crazy masking job. I would like to paint those cavities. I'd like to dye them black. I just think it's going to give the finished product a little cleaner, even though that's going to be covered up, obviously. It's just... it's one of those little details that, I'm going to notice. So I've gotten some black toner dye. I'm going to spray in there. I've protected the guitar, and I'm going to paint it black inside. All right, and I'm going to let that dry. Maybe come back in a little while and add some more. Hope I didn't ruin my guitar. I am now starting the wet sanding process. I'm starting with an 800 grit sandpaper, and I'm just going to sand very lightly. I'm getting ready to spray another coat of lacquer. Basically, this stage of the process involves spray lacquer, let it sit for a couple of days, and then sand it down start with an 800, move to 1200, 1500, and 2000 grit sandpapers, wet sanding. to give it a nice smooth finish. And then you spray a couple coats of lacquer on and you do it again. So that's what I've been doing. This is basically the third time that I've sprayed, probably the 6th coat, 7th coat. I've done 2 rounds of spray and sand, and this is just time-consuming process. Alright, I am getting ready to do the last sanding before I put on the final coat. I've been sanding for several days. I've had a lot of drips along the way, and you know, currently I've got a little imperfection for where, you know, it's still wet. My arm touched it. I don't know if you can see that. It's pretty visible when it's in the right light. So, you know, that's the kind of stuff you're sanding out, the little drips and little imperfections. Each coat gets a little bit glassier, a little bit smoother. So like I said, I've got about 9 or 10 coats of lacquer on right now, and I'm getting ready to do the final sanding before the final top coats, starting with an 800 grit. I'm also using Corazon as a lubricant. Just to help lubricate the sandpaper. It's a very mild, it's citrus, very mild cleaner, but it works as a nice lubricant for the sandpaper. So you're just always using very light pressure. When you're sanding the lacquer, you want to go in a circular motion, as opposed to with the grain like you're normally sanding wood. Again, super light around the edges. Just, you don't want to wear off that finish so that you're pulling up color. I've done that a couple times in this process, and I've been able to go back in with the stain dye where I've gone through the lacquer, and the wood, if you're through to the wood, it'll take the stain dye again. You really can't see where I've done it. It blends in pretty well.
You get more comfy place to sit, like kind of a beanbag sort of.
Okay, I have applied my final coat of lacquer, and I'm getting ready to do my final sanding and buffing. I'm going to be using super fine wet and dry sandpaper. I'm going to be using wet, lubricating with Goo Gone. Starting with a 1500 grit. I'm also going to be using a 2000 grit. I couldn't find a 3000 grit sandpaper. It's not the kind of thing they sell at Home Depot. The Woodcraft store is usually my go-to for specialty items like that, but they didn't have actual sandpaper. They have a microfiber product. You know, that's the equivalent of the 3000 and even finer sandpaper than that. It's a microfiber mesh, which, you know, it sands even finer than 3000 grit. So that's what we're going to be using. And this will be the last time I have to sand. This will probably be the lightest sanding pressure that I've used yet. Wanting to take very little of that lacquer off, just wanting to smooth it down. All right, and here's the microfiber mesh product that I'm using. And this, I'm told, will just buff to a really nice finish. This is the 6000. I don't know if that's a grit. That's just the number that's on it. The next level we'll be using is 8000. And then the final, I believe, is 12,000. But this is just a really fine buffing grade microfiber mesh. Okay, I have finally finished all my sanding, and now the next stage, I'm going to use a rubbing compound, a buffing compound that you would use, you know, to buff a shine in your car, to buff this to a nice glassy shine. So finally done sanding and lacquering. Long process. Look for El Corazon Part 5 to see the polishing process. And remember to like and subscribe if you find this information helpful. Thanks for watching.